Half-Life Alyx is 1 week away. That is an insanely short amount of time in order to be able to play the first 15 to 18 hour Half-Life experience we've seen since 2004. And obviously, with the lead up to Half-Life Alyx, Valve is becoming far more talkative to the general public than they have been before. Adam Savage is tested, and IGN have been given a lot of access to their developers, their office, and their builds, and they've been creating a lot of informative content. The problem is, a lot of the important information is mixed in with just a significant amount of filler. So, we're going to be digging through everything as quickly as possible and delivering to you, the Half-Life fans, all of the important information on Half-Life Alyx as quickly and efficiently as possible. Welcome back to Half-Life Alyx Ketchup. Here we go. Let's start with IGN. There was a video recently published about the development history of the gravity gloves. First of all, Tristan Reedford is a person that we've never really heard speak in public before. I didn't know he was British, and I also didn't know he had the mannerisms and voice of Sean Murray. Are you like Sean Murray's dad or something?
You know, there was an opportunity to tell a bit of the backstory of the gravity gun in, like, these are the prototype for it.
The gravity gloves themselves were created to take the place of a held weapon, like the gravity gun itself. Instead of having to switch to a separate item, the user would just have that ability on them at all times.
We wanted a mechanic that didn't require you to carry a separate weapon or device.
Kerry Davis, a gameplay developer on Half-Life Alyx, who gave the legendary door talk at DigiPen last year, had this to say about the gravity gloves.
I sort of always saw it as kind of a remote fishing pole. You connect to it from a distance and you just kind of tug it, and that sends it sailing through the air. Tuning that was kind of tricky because we didn't want people to get exhausted from doing this constantly, but it couldn't be so subtle that you were constantly accidentally pulling things.
And it's important to state that their functionality is heavily steeped within physics themselves, so you don't need to be looking at the object 100% of the time for them to reach your hands, and they're not always going to be flying towards you or flying away from you in a straight path. Tristan Reedford himself actually is the creator behind the majority of the user interface or user experience design on the gloves themselves. So the check engine light, that's his, the hearts, those are his, and they also go into some history and cut features from these gravity gloves, which we'll cover after the game is out. They then talk about the flashlight, which is attached to the left hand.
We had to do some extra work with the flashlight because when you're aiming it straight, it's fine, but players like to brace their weapon.
When you're doing this, it's off over there, so we built in a little ball joint to the end of the flashlight. And there's two poses. It'll point at your teleport point, or if we know you're bracing the gun, it'll switch position.
And then we're moving on to IGN's article about playing the first 4 hours of Half-Life Alyx. And the issue that I take with this is how it does spoil the opening set piece of Half-Life Alyx, a point that I've personally tried to keep out of the public eye. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the opening of Half-Life Alyx, mute the video until the speculation icon appears. Quote, "The first new Half-Life game in over 12 years begins more quietly than you'd probably expect. You, as Alex Vance, are on an apartment patio looking out at a City 17 afternoon 5 years prior to Half-Life 2. Thanks to the Valve Index VR headset, you're immediately there. You can pick up objects around you and throw them at the house across the street. A Strider thunders by, using the decaying city infrastructure to propel itself down the streets and across the rooftops. You talk to your father, Eli Vance, on a video call." Then IGN did what is essentially an AMA, where they talk about their experiences playing the first 4 hours of Half-Life Alyx and take community questions. Of all the questions, the 3 that matter are A, there are loading screens. Quote, "There are loading screens, different visually but almost identical in function to those in Half-Life 2. Occasionally, though not really too frequently, you'll reach a dead end or empty hallway where an overlay interrupts you saying it's loading, and before too long it fades away and you keep on trucking." B, they talk about barnacles. Quote, "Valve has confirmed to us that you can now toggle an option that will have barnacles pull you up. This was added since our visit to Valve." And C, does this mean more Half-Life? Quote, "As you'll also hear in my interview with Gabe Newell next week, yes, Valve seems to have reopened the door to Half-Life rather than slam it shut after Alyx ships. I'm not sure if we'll see a Half-Life 3 though. My sense is that Valve wants to keep playing in VR. Unless Half-Life 3 is in VR, it's Valve, so they'll do what they want to. It doesn't matter if it's only selling 100,000 copies. They have Steam to fund anything they want with seemingly no financial risks." There's a lot of assumptions being made here in this response. Is Half-Life 3 going to be in VR? I don't know, Valve might do it. If Half-Life Alyx only sells 100,000 copies, will that matter to Valve? Of course it will. You have to remember that even though Valve still has Steam to fund literally anything they want, and they have no financial risk, they look at things in terms of the number of billions of dollars it makes. If Half-Life Alyx underperforms, it may cause future Half-Life games to be rethought or straight out shelved. So don't completely take what Ryan is saying here at face value. Tested did a half an hour long interview with Greg Coomer and Robin Walker. And out of this half hour, the important information pertinent to us right now is that arms and shoulders are actually simulated, but not seen for player comfort.
Display the hand colliding in a way that would make sense connected to a real
So
human
you're
arm.
modeling, but you're not showing like...
Yeah, there were a set of reasons why we needed to make sure your hand is still connected to your arm, so whether it's things like grab the other side of a door and then push the door closed. But at the end of the day, we just found that as soon as we visualized that, there were a set of problems for a bunch of other customers.
The clothing and body of Alyx is simulated, regardless of its visual representation, so the game can simulate the sounds that should be played when traversing different obstacles.
Not just, there's a full virtual clothing simulator. Like, we have a concept of all the things that are essentially on Alyx. The sounds they generate while you teleport are affected by what our traversal figures out. Like, if we know that you were going to jump down and then move across something when you do that teleport, clothing will play that drop down land sounds as you go.
And there is no one adding features to Half-Life Alyx, and this interview was actually conducted in December. So as of December of 2019, no one was adding any new mechanics, levels, or really major parts to the game anymore. It was all about bug testing.
There aren't a lot of people walking around adding brand new features or, environments or like new
zero people
character
doing
scenarios. So, yeah, if somebody tries to do that at this point, they have an uphill road.
Which means speculation. There are a lot of designers, artists, and writers that have been freed up to work on the future of the Half-Life series. And this is where I want to let people know my plan for the rest of this week. I am not going to be speculating on future Half-Life or Valve content. Obviously, we are buckled down and focusing hard on Half-Life Alyx. However, when the game has shipped, we're going to be opening ourselves up to what is coming next, because I have secretly been gathering a lot of information on all of that, and I hope to impress you when it comes time to talk about it. But as always, I'm Tyler McVicker. This is Valve News Network. Have a good day. Adios.